So I'm really excited to be here today with two of my good friends. I have Josh Pritchett and Coley Long. Um, Josh traveled a long way to be with us, and Coley not so far. You know, he and I are sitting here in D.C. where it's kind of snowy today, but would like for you guys just to take a minute and introduce yourselves.
So I'm Josh Pritchett. I'm CEO of VO Careers. I flew in from Colombia, so I kind of spend some of my time outside of the U.S. now. Good to be here. I spent some time incarcerated, built a life outside of that, professionally, education, things like that. Hope to get into some of those things, but yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Great, great, great. And Coley.
Hey, how you doing? I'm Cody LeVar Long. I over here from the District of Columbia. Currently a program associate at Georgetown University at Prison Justice Initiative. I served 26 years incarceration, and now I'm here reestablishing my life.
So we're gonna go with you because one, I know you said you served 26 years in prison.
Yes.
Wow. First, that's a lot of time. And I think that's important for a lot of people who, you know, are serving 10, 20, 30 years and they want to know what does life look like after you come home from prison. And to me, you're a good example of that. And so tell us, how long have you been home?
I've been home now, going on 18 months.
Wow. Welcome home.
Thank you, thank
You
you.
know, like that's a short period of time in comparison. And so you said that you're at Georgetown University.
Yes, ma'am.
So talk to me about that.
Georgetown University gave me a space while I was inside because I really believe reentry starts while you're incarcerated. And I started with my matriculation in university while I was inside. They offered me a job while I was inside. So when I came home, I was released July 29th, 2022. I started work for Georgetown August the 8th. That next,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now that's a success story. And I know that's something that the two of you have in common because you went to college after you came home. But before we go there, talk to me a little bit about like how long were you in prison and when did you come home?
So I served about 3 years.
Hmm.
Came home right before my, I believe, 21st birthday. And then I just got a job, and I worked for a few years, maybe three or four, before enrolling in any type of education. Did community college locally where I was at, just south of Richmond, Virginia, and then went to University of Virginia and got my kind of big boy degree, 4 year degree, and then graduated.
Wonderful. And you're getting a big boy degree since he's using that terminology coming up soon, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, when is that? First of all, let's start. You're not gonna keep calling me yes, ma'am. Now let's start with that. But I
Yeah.
appreciate the respect, but not necessary to that degree.
Yeah.
So when are you getting your degree?
Well, my degree track is 2026. So yeah.
And what is your degree going to be in?
I get my bachelor's in liberal arts.
Okay. All
Nice.
right. So I want to take us to just kind of reentry. And, I always say that we have this national problem called mass incarceration, and reentry is hyperlocal. But I also recognize that reentry is different for all of us, and it's definitely different um, for from men to women. And so would like to really kind of get into reentry. What tell us a little bit about your reentry journey, and then also what do you wish somebody would have told you? So those are some of the ways that I want to talk about this, so that we can encourage those who are watching this episode on their prison tablet and they're thinking about coming home. And so maybe let's start with getting a job because that is
Mm.
always the focus. While we're sitting in prison, we're thinking about getting a job. If you have probation parole, they're hammering that on you.
Yeah.
If you're couch surfing with your family, they want you to get a job, right? So let's just talk about what did getting a job look like for you guys?
So I was very fortunate in that I maxed out my time. So when I came home, I didn't have to deal with probation, parole, things like that. And I think that alone, everybody knows.
Hmm.
Huge game changer. So I did have more time to just focus on, hey, I was motivated. I wanted to get out, get employed. I was locked in a cage, and I was so amped up and energetic and ready. But the reality is I mean, you got to go through 1,000 no's just to find one yes. And I think you have to mentally prepare for that. You almost have to be kind of a positive pessimist, knowing that you're going to get told no, knowing that you're going to have things that you're very interested in, that you're motivated and you have your heart into. Hey, I'd love to really do this job, and I can do a fantastic job at it, just to be told no. And you have to kind of keep pushing through that. And I think ultimately somebody is going to see your authenticity. see your genuine desire, and one person, or two, is going to take a chance, and that's really what unlocks it. And you mentioned family. Family is a mixed bag because they can be encouraging, they can be discouraging, and some people try to be helpful in unhelpful ways. And you have to kind of balance all that and be emotionally sound and be prepared for that too. But those are some of the things and part of my reentry. It took me about 4 months to find a job. And,
Wow.
and it was a minimum wage part-time. They wouldn't even hire me full. It was very, we'll give you a little bit, but once I got it, they were like, hey, this guy is.
And so you don't have to necessarily mention the company, but what was the work that you did?
So it was in retail. I look back, it's kind of funny. I got a part-time job as a cashier, which most people with a record, they probably wouldn't put at the cash register. But I did that, and one of the things that stood out to my employers was while customers were not in line, I was fixing things in the aisles. I was making things more presentable. I was helping, stock items and clean up and organize. And then when that was done, I would open up training courses they had on the computer where I was a cash register, and I would study and learn things. And so they saw all these things, but that was what I was doing in retail.
Got it. Got it. And so you said that you had a job before you actually left prison
Yes.
with Georgetown. So I guess mine and your experience is a little similar because I had a job before I left prison, 6 months before I left prison. A friend of mine gave me a job as a paralegal. I had never been a paralegal before, didn't even know what a paralegal was, but his point was, you took good skill sets to prison. I think you can do this job. So talk to me about coming home from prison and going to work at Georgetown.
I mean, the main thing is like the biggest part, professional development. Like being in a carceral setting for so long, and then the next week you're thrust in is in the field of academia, and then professional setting learning. Well, like I said, my situation is kind of anomaly because, like I said, we all had a job, then come straight to it. But I look at my counterparts, like my comrades that's coming home, and the constant bury that scarlet letter F. When you have to check that box as a felon, and in DC particular, like there is a little felon-friendly incentives, especially in the DC agencies, but outside the private sector, it's kind of a struggle. And a lot of guys and women, they struggle with that. As a returned citizen, you're relegated into a certain occupational field, and it might not be really conducive to you having a successful reentry. And also, you got to factor in the cost of living in DC. It's astronomically high. So those are things that I see a lot of people, that come from my similar circumstances has to struggle with. Like myself, though, I've been fortunate. I start. The main thing that I really wish somebody would have told me, but I kind of learned that on my own, is like how important connections are, social capital,
Sure.
and being able to invest in yourself and other people willing to see the value in you, invest in you. And that's the opportunity that my professor, who's currently my director and boss, Mark Howard, that's what he gave me. And I did that consciously by making myself vulnerable, not being afraid. Yeah, I made a mistake, but the mistake does not ultimately determine who I can be and the possibilities that I have. And they seen that, and he gave me the opportunity. So that was my situation.
Wonderful. So 18 months you've been home. How have you progressed on that job?
Oh, I hit the ground running. It's like meteoric for real, because like in a matter of a year, like they're trusting me, that they're grooming me. Well, not grooming me, but helping me position myself so I can be a director of my own community engagement department at PJI. And that's a lot of trust that they invested in me.
So PJI,
I'm sorry, yeah, Prisons and Justice Initiative.
and so that initiative, is it only in DC or is that a national initiative?
Currently, it's only in the DMV area because
Okay.
Georgetown. And,
DMV is DC, Maryland, and Virginia.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
local Virginia
Yeah.
terms and
Yeah.
things. Yeah, or
I gotta
Maryland.
get cognizant of that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's only right now in the DC, Maryland, Virginia because it's connected specifically to Georgetown.
Georgetown University.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. So let's talk about something a little bit different. You've been home 18 months. You've been home.
Maybe 13 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about something fun, like dating
Dating.
and
Oh, wow.
relationships. we'll find out how fun that is. So,
Yeah.
since you guys have been home, have you dated? Are you married? In a relationship? Now I'm going to be a little nosy and get in your business.
Yeah.
You've been there 13 years.
You went first, and you were
Yeah.
like really quick to go first. So go ahead.
Well, dating is an interesting thing. Somebody asked me a long time ago. I did a podcast, and they were like, "Hey, any advice for somebody coming home?" And I said, "Don't get in a relationship." And they said, "Hold on, what?" And it's not that it's a bad thing, but it's just it can add more stress. Especially if you're early out and you don't know which way is up. It's why increase. So, anyways, to answer your
Yeah, well,
question,
that was really good. Did you follow their advice?
for a couple months. So yeah, I mean, I dated maybe 6, 8 months out. Got my heart broke. Got really sad, and then I was like, hey, I'm just gonna focus on my professional, my career, things like that. And then what happened was I got really picky, and then I was like, oh, nobody's good enough, this that. And so now I would say I'm more in the kind of dating scene, not as much because I run a company also. It's a little hard to manage both. But I'm very much, hey, I want my structure in place. I want everything taken care of, and then I'll invest in that. So I'm in the field, but I'm not committed to anything in particular.
Okay. I like that answer. How about you, Coley?
Similarly, like prior to me coming home, all my friends told me the same thing. Look, bro, don't come out here and get in a relationship. You was locked up since a kid.
Women are trouble, it sounds like, right?
Yeah.
No,
Well,
not-
our ability to manage a relationship.
Yeah. Well, honestly, because I really like being locked up so long. I used to live vicariously through books, like Danielle Steele. And that's the only two, like those type of novels and things. So I was like really main thing. Like, I want to give me a wife. I want to come home and all that, and I still do. But prior to like actually coming home, like I haven't had my heart broken yet. But I want to be in a situation. I don't want to keep breaking hearts.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because like, you don't live up to expectations because honestly, like we was incarcerated since we were kids, and like I studied arrested development. Like my maturity level is stuck at like 17 right now, so it's like I'm at a kid at a candy store, and I think one of the funniest experiences because like I think when you're incarcerated, you're deprived of meeting people. So the biggest thing is like I wanted to get on a dating app. So I wanted to that plenty of fish type thing. So what it was when you created a profile, I posted all jail pictures like when I was.
Now
like,
that should have really
no,
got
but it was an
It's a
experiment for
double-edged
me.
sword.
Yeah.
It was because like when I was incarcerated, I was real buff. Like I'll cut up.
Yeah, I've seen some of your pictures, by the way,
Oh.
online.
Yeah, so I was real buff, and so people like I got a lot of feedback, but it was like, "Are you incarcerated?" And like, yeah, and then everything they shut out. But then I was posting pictures of me like 11 because I did a lot of things in the 8 months, and now like people will come back, and it was just like just testing my vanity's sake, just testing my desirability and stuff. So that's just, but the kind of adolescent things that we get caught up in, stroking the ego and stuff.
One thing I know about you is you are real solid in your emotional intelligence, your emotional well-being, and so forth. So talk to me a little bit about that because you went to prison, you said at 17?
I just turned 18 right when
You turned 18, and it sounds like you went to prison around 17, 18? Yeah, so you guys went to prison around the same time. You did 3 years, you did 26 years. But I know one of the things that we've talked about in the past is how you did guided meditation and you tapped into a little bit more of a mindful experience while you were in prison. Can you talk about how you've taken that practice and continue it today?
Yeah, I had to because like primarily, I'm in the documentary, and I always talk about that because it was the culminating event for my paradigm shift. It's like when I was in solitary for like 27 months, and I seen like this person lose their mind, and that right there, that was my. Even though I was sentenced with a life without parole sentence, I was slated to die in prison. I was like, this can't be my fate. And one of the things that helped me, I read a book by Dr. Viktor Frankl, A Man's Search for Meaning. And that really helped me with my paradigm shift as far as like regulating my thoughts. Like I had to get in a space where, I may be confined in prison, But being a prisoner is optional, and it starts with your thinking. A lot of us growing up in the background I grew up in, we were prisoners before even coming to prison. We was prisoners of a cycle of toxic masculinity, of violence, of intergenerational trauma, all those type of things. In prisoners that made us make choices that normally that you wouldn't make. So while I was inside, I started to challenge those thoughts, and purifying those thoughts, and I did that meditation. So I took the time while I was serving time to invest in myself, starting to learn to value myself and appreciate myself. And it starts with the thoughts, because your character is based on your thoughts, So once I, learned those practices and incorporated it, I felt obligated to share those things.
Good. And I know you go back into the prison now
Yes.
and share some of those guided meditation practices that have helped you
Yeah,
as well, right?
that's how I get back. Excuse my language. That's how I say F the system. That's how I win when I go back in prison, and share. That's how I give meaning to my suffering. Going back talking to those young guys, and the females there, letting them know that, they are the creator of their thoughts, so they can manifest their destiny by believing in who they are.
Got it. No, I appreciate that. You said you were in a documentary, so tell me the name of the documentary you were in.
District of Second Chances.
District of Second Chances.
Yes, it's produced by Families Against Mandatory Minimums.
Okay. Also known as FAM for
FAM,
those of us who are part of the criminal legal system. We know of FAM. So, from a mindfulness, meditation, or just your emotional, mental well-being, how did you take care of yourself after coming home?
Coming home. So first, I just want to say you sound a lot like a man who was a mentor of mine, who just that mindfulness and intentionality and focus on wisdom and kind of practices that get you outside of, hey, what's my destructive thinking? What is the issue I have with my feelings about things? Because often the things that are problems are not actually the problem. It's our feelings about the thing, and then we have to react to our feelings, and that leads us in the situation. So coming home, and I'd be curious about your experience with this. It's hard. I mean, you get busy. I used to read and meditate, and I was very invested in my spirituality while I was locked up. But I also went down for count every day, and I always had time programmed into my day where I could do those things. And out here, in the real world, you're always busy. There's always one more thing to do, and one more, a deadline, and all these things. And so it's hard to keep up with those practices. But I don't think they ever lose their importance and their value. And so now I've found a way to program that into my week. Typically for me, it's Sundays. In the afternoon, I kind of start to decompress. I got some rituals. Self-care Sunday kind of thing. But that's what I do. And then the other thing too is mentorship and other people in the community who are a little bit ahead of me, whether it's in the season of life or professionally or educationally. And then just open myself up to listen to people. And that I find is also like kind of a release valve that kind of de-escalates my internal emotion. Is hearing somebody else who can communicate to me and educate me is kind of therapeutic a little bit too.
So I want to give you both just one opportunity each to, if someone was leaving prison, next week, what would be the one piece of advice you would give them? To kind of encourage them so that, for me, I want people to come home and stay home from prison. That's success, period. Regardless of, whether they do amazing things like you guys are doing, just coming home and staying home and getting your life back is success. So what is one thing you would tell someone to do?
That's a good question. I kind of pondered it. I think actually it would be two things I would
Okay.
tell them. The first thing I would tell them that, and I learned this, it's a saying, it's an old African proverb that no one suffer more in this world than the family of the fool. And I say that because it gauges that, like when we was doing time, it was somebody else doing time with you. So when you out here, the consequences, the choice that you made, that somebody else can suffer the consequence or reap the benefits from the consequences as well. And the second thing I say that, just remind them that whatever adversity that they go out there, there's always an inner strength inside of them that's greater than any external force that they may encounter. So just tap into that strength, they always will be victorious.
Got it.
Yeah, and I would say, time takes time. Just give yourself room, patience, and I know sometimes it's hard to feel that way when you have all these pressures, but don't you're not in a rush. You know, take it easy. There were some older men and women who told me that. They said, "Hey, man, you got time." You know, and that gave me more kind of opportunity to just go through things as they needed to and not try to rush things and trip myself up. So that's one thing I would say.
Good. Well, thank you guys for joining me, and thank you for, the work that you both are doing. I know you both do a lot of mentorship, and you continue to give back. But you guys are a reentry success story, and I'm so grateful for you guys sharing your experiences with me and also those who are listening.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's good to be here.